The Gores had probably already dealt with it. They weren't going to win. Their hopes up. Both sides going up and down. I just feel for all the families all the way around right now.
True, Leslie. But when you play politics at this level, one of the reasons you play it at this level is the excitement of it. Not a bigger prize in this country than winning the presidency. And that's one reason they play at this level. And while it is gut-wrenching, and particularly for the families at this time, this is absolutely maddening. And no one could blame, let me say this, well, I was going to say no one could blame Governor Bush of Texas if he turned to his brother, Governor Bush of Florida, and said, you know what I want to do is I want to send a couple of Texas Rangers down there and impound those votes from those 5 precincts because there's got to be suspicions beginning to build. Well, maybe somebody out there is trying to steal an election, quote unquote. I'm not suggesting it's been stolen or it can be stolen, but that's got to begin creeping into some people's minds. It's that wild and woolly tonight. Now, if the spread between the two candidates is less than a certain number, and we're checking on that number, an automatic recount is required under the law. So that's another card, another joker that goes into this joker-filled deck. Not funny joker, but unpredictable jokers. I'm going to repeat it. If the spread between the two candidates is less than a certain number, we've not confirmed what that number is, we're checking on it, an automatic recount in Florida is required. And let me say one more time, may say it other times, Florida's the whole game here. Bush, we thought, and still believe, had won Florida. If he wins Florida, if it stays in Bush's column, he will be the new president. But if it turns around and it winds up that Florida is Gore's, then Gore will be the next president, while we note that Wisconsin and Oregon have had the polls closed for a long time. Wisconsin with 11 electoral votes and Oregon with 7. They are, as they would say around the courthouse, they are moot at the moment because Florida is where it's happening. Well, I wish we had more information to pass along to you. We simply don't. We'll review. Takes 270 electoral votes to win. George Bush, we believed and still believe, will have no fewer than 271 when it's all over. But I'd be less than honest if I didn't say that our knees are beginning to wobble a little on that. Al Gore has 249. The man who wins Florida becomes the next president. Bob Schieffer.
Well, there's no question about it. And we've talked about this before, but I think we have to go back to it. There are still those absentee ballots. Now, Ed Bradley says now, if I understand it, they have now begun to count those absentee ballots, but there may be as many as what, Ed, 10,000?
Well, but there are 30,000 that have been mailed from overseas. I'm not sure how many ballots there, absentee ballots
have been mailed back.
Have been mailed back.
But
they've got 10 days to get here.
That's going to be crucial to this. We may not know until later in the week who's won Florida.
Well, I recognize, for those of you in the audience, that bulletin, senior Gore aide confirms Gore withdraws concession in U.S. presidential race. More to follow. That's bulletin material with a capital B. A senior Gore aide has confirmed to Reuters, pretty dependable wire service, that Gore withdraws concession in U.S. presidential race. Now, that would indicate that perhaps Vice President Gore had already called George Bush with a concession speech, with a concession. We don't know that. He went to make a concession speech before the big crowd, and somebody said, well, wait a minute, it's narrowing down in Florida. Now, the situation at the moment is nobody knows for a fact who has won Florida. Far be it for me to question one of our esteemed leaders, but somebody needs to begin explaining why Florida has now not been pulled back to the undecided category. When you get to these computer models, you may as well be speaking Swahili or High Norse to me, and there must be some reason why we stick in with Florida for Bush, but somebody in due time will no doubt confirm that. But we want to repeat this bulletin. A senior Gore aide is quoted by Reuters as confirming that Gore has withdrawn concession in the U.S. presidential race. And this is the reason. Florida is it. It's the whole deal. It's the real deal, the big deal, the only deal. 25 electoral votes. They'd been put in Bush's column, but at last report, fewer than 300 votes separated the two in votes actually counted down there. Some recounts had been announced for, quote, discrepancies in 5 precincts. This is a wild, woolly, and weird situation. Leslie Stahl.
I can't imagine that the state of Florida won't have a recall.
A recount.
A recount, I'm sorry, a recount. I can't imagine. It can't get lower than this. It can't get tighter than, it can't be tighter than this. And if they have a policy that says they must have a recount below a certain number, we've certainly gone below that number.
We have gone below that number, but we don't have the final number yet. That would be the one possibility. There's so many possibilities out there. Bob Schieffer.
Well, because we don't have the absentee count as yet.
Exactly.
And we'll also have political pressure to have that recount. It's inconceivable that we're not going to go to bed tonight with that thing resolved. We can't. It's up in the air, and it's going to be there until somebody goes in and really studies what's going on.
Well, translation of this is that however you think that it's going to wind up finally, you may say to yourself, well, I got a feeling that Bush in the end is going to pull it out. And if you're in the Gore camp, you may say, you know, I got a hot flash here just recently that Gore may win it. It's pretty hard now to make a case that Gore is going to concede before sometime tomorrow during the daylight hours. Now, we've been humbled several times tonight by saying things like that, but it's really hard to see. In Austin, let's see if we can pick up that audio. I think they're making some announcement.
I'm not quite sure I understand.
Well, I think it's being explained to the crowd in Austin why somebody suggested they want to tamp down that big celebration there. And in Nashville, the crowd has come alive at least to a degree. Where we are here is 271 was and is now what it looks like that Bush will have when 270 is needed to win in the Electoral College. But that all depends on 25 electoral votes in Florida staying in Bush's column. And with recounts already being called for in Dade County for what an official there called, quote, discrepancies, maybe possible discrepancies, absentee situation, including absentee ballots postmarked today, have to come in from overseas. As close as it is, right now, one would have to say it's highly unlikely that Gore is going to concede before sometime tomorrow. I wouldn't say it's highly unlikely, but I would say it's at least borderline improbable that George Bush is going to make any victory statement before he can be absolutely, positively, mortally certain that he's been elected president. So if you're going to play the probabilities, you got to bet that we're not going to know until at least sometime in the daylight hours tomorrow, and there's a growing possibility, if not indeed probability, that we may not know the outcome of this presidential race for sure. Confirmed, concession statement by Gore, victory statement by Bush for many, many hours and possibly days. Too strong, Bob Schieffer?
No, I don't think so at all, because for sure neither one of them is going to say anything until they get these votes counted down there in Florida. At least this absentee, these ballots that they've got down there that they've apparently started counting, and as Ed says, there are some more that may be coming in the mail. So I don't think they're going to say anything for a while.
Bill Whitaker's in Austin. Bill, what are the Bush people saying?
Well, Dan, I just spoke with Karen Hughes, the communications director for the Bush campaign, and she says that about 10 minutes ago, the vice president did call the governor and retracted his concession. And she said that the governor found that unbelievable. She says right now, though, the governor's brother, Jeb Bush, is on the phone with operatives in Florida, and they say that their numbers show that Bush has won the state by more than 2,000 votes. So they still claim this as a victory. As I say, they found the retraction unbelievable, and they're not giving up on their claim to victory. Dan?
Bill Whitaker. Well, as the outline of the story now stands, when it appeared that George Bush had nailed down the 25 electoral votes in Florida, to come up with at least 271 electoral college votes. In fact, that's what he came up with. After taking a good look at that, apparently, reportedly, Vice President Gore called Governor Bush with a congratulatory telephone call. And then Gore got in his vehicle and was driven down to where he was going to make the public concession speech. In the meantime, things dropped down drastically in Florida. Taking Governor Bush's brother Jeb's word for it, he thinks Bush may win by 2,000 votes in Florida. That's so close that Gore obviously said to himself, and some members of his staff said, hold it, Mr. Vice President. So now Bill Whitaker reports that Governor Bush, I think the word used was he found it unbelievable, But Gore called back and said, you know that congratulatory phone call I gave you earlier? I'm going to pull that little number back because I don't know what's happening in Florida. And that's where things stand at the moment. Now, you may want to keep in mind that early in the evening, everyone we know of called Florida for Gore fairly early on in the night after the polls closed. Then there was this extraordinary situation, highly unusual, in which somebody got skeptical of the data that had been reported from some precincts. There was no suggestion of any hijinks or, for that matter, anything under the table, but just when you're dealing with eventually about 6 million votes in Florida, somebody said, you know, these votes from this precinct we're putting in the computer don't look so well. That was early in the evening. Now, then we withdrew it. We said we put Florida in the we don't know category. Then later in the evening, we moved it to George Bush, saying Bush gets Florida's 25 electoral votes, and now it doesn't look so certain. We show Bush by less than 2,000 votes in Florida. John Robertson, Nashville. John, what do you hear?
Well, Dan, I just talked with Terry McAuliffe, who is President Clinton's chief fundraiser, who told me that, yes, indeed, the vice president did call the Texas governor and take it back. The Gore campaign believes there are enough voting irregularities, not to mention the closeness of the vote in Florida, that they should await a recount, which occurs under Florida statute. Anytime that the vote is as close as it is, I believe within a 0.5%, they order an automatic recount, and this is, as you said, Dan, 1/50th of 1%. So the votes will be automatically recounted, and the vice president has, in fact, called the Texas governor and said, I'm not going to concede just yet. We're going to await the results of the recount in Florida. And again, not only because of the closeness of the vote, but also because of what Terry McAuliffe, again, the President Clinton's chief fundraiser, said, and I'm sure that this is coming from the Gore campaign, were irregularities, missing ballot boxes and the like. I think they want to make sure that everything is straightened out before the vice president gets up there and gives away the presidency of the United States.
John in Nashville, thanks. Gloria Borgia, you've been talking to Bill Daley, Big Al in the Gore campaign. In fact, he ran the campaign. What do you have to say?
Actually, Dan, I reached Bill Daley's cell phone. Somebody else answered his cell phone. And Bill Daley is going to come out in a few minutes, I am told, and give a statement. I was not told exactly what the statement would say, but I have to believe that since they took back the concession from the Bush campaign, that Bill Daley, who is, of course, the chairman of the campaign, would come out and say something similar to the people who are waiting outside there in Nashville. So he will come out and give a statement. I guess we just have to wait and see what it says, Dan.
Well, that'll be welcome because it may clear up a few things. This is where we appear to be, folks. The CBS News has now, for the second time tonight, pulled back Florida. We are now putting Florida in the undecided category. The reason we're doing that is that in actual votes counted, our CBS News actual vote counted tally is Bush leads by about 2,000 votes. And it being that low, charges of irregularities, a recount going to be called for by the Bush people, apparently. We're pulling back Florida. This doesn't mean that Bush won't be elected president. And the odds are that Bush can still win the presidency. Not going to say it's odds in his favor, but if you lead by even one vote, if it turns out that you won by one vote, you win. And the last actual vote counted total, our count is that it's somewhat less than 2,000 votes a Bush lead. At one point, the Florida Secretary of State on his website said it was down to 269 votes Bush over Gore. And that's the reason that there's likely to be a recount in Florida. Cautionary note for all the Democrats in pulling for Gore. The history of recounts generally is that the candidate who's leading when the recount is called for is the candidate who wins. But this situation has been so strange and so unusual all night long. What we're saying for the moment is we're going to put Florida, we think this is fair under the circumstances, back in the undecided category. So now, this is the way the electoral map looks at the moment. All the states in red have been won by Bush. The ones blinking are states that were carried by the Democratic presidential and vice presidential ticket in 1996, but the blinking lights indicate those states have gone for Bush tonight. The states in blue, far fewer states, but bigger states, including New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, and California, not to mention Washington, have gone for Gore. So under this setup, with Florida taken out, Gore leads Bush 249 to 246 with 270 needed to win. It's still